Hi everyone, welcome to SPED 760 Behavior Analysis and Intervention. This is your instructor insights for week 1. Our topic this week will be the typical development and perceptions. So this week we'll focus on the causes and factors related to behavior so that you can develop an understanding of why behavior occurs or why we as adults might view it as negative. Specifically, you'll learn about typical social, emotional, and behavioral development, what causes the development of negative behaviors, and the impact of culture and adult perceptions on how behaviors are defined, addressed, and assessed. So at the conclusion of this week, you should be able to synthesize your learning about typical social, emotional, and behavioral development through the creation of a short presentation, and apply your learning about culture and perceptions to supporting students who struggle socially, emotionally, and or behaviorally to a variety of contexts and situations. So your tasks for the week, your to-do list, like I talked about when I did my tour of the course, there's a discussion board introduction that can be found within the welcome orientation section. That's due by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. It's not graded, however, it's a great way for us to get to know one another in the course and develop that sense of community, and it is a required element. I'll remind you about where that is when I go into the course in here with you in just a moment and show you around the other items here I'm going to go through in our tasks for week 1. Make sure that you print and read the syllabus. I'll remind you about where that is. Also, you should be sure that you've closely read the discussion board guidelines and the APA information. Then you'll want to do the readings and viewings for this week. Do that before you do the discussion board or your assignment. However, I do recommend that you go through and look at everything to get a big picture idea about where we're going for the week, and then go back and begin with the readings and viewings. I'll show you where those are too in a moment. Discussion board number 1, I do have 2 deadlines there in parentheses. The reason for that is because in the past some students, and I feel bad, were a little bit confused early on, because it does say that the deadline is always Sunday at 11:59 p.m. In this course, I'm doing a couple different things with discussion boards, so there will be some different deadlines that'll happen sooner and this and that. But for this first week anyway, we're good. And then I'll really be specific about when things might be changing. But just know that most times, and for this first week, that's the case. And like I said, otherwise I'll be very specific about when it changes. You have 2 deadlines. So you have one Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. when you need to have your initial post up. Then the discussion board closes on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. And by that time, you need to then have read and responded to peers' comments on your post, and you need to read and respond to peers' posts. And there's information all about that in the discussion board guidelines. So just know that you need to have your initial post up by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. unless otherwise I'm very explicit about it needing to be different. So you have until Sunday to finish up your reading and responding. And if you don't have that initial post up by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m., and I'll give you reminders and things, then you do lose points. So just be aware of all that. It'll make sense as we get going. But just an FYI, I felt bad when the student misunderstood what I had there. This week there's also a presentation. That'll be your assignment for the week, and I'll show you where that is. That will be due by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Then you'll want to be thinking about a student that you can use for the functional behavioral assessment that you'll be doing, the behavior intervention plan, and then you'll actually be carrying out the intervention that you design while you're doing your FBA and BIP over 2 to 3 weeks. You'll be assessing it and writing up a little report at the end. So all I need you to do for now is be thinking about a student that you could use for this. If you're teaching in a classroom, if you're a special education teacher, think about a student that is in need of an FBA and BIP anyway coming up. If you're a general education teacher, be thinking about a student that might be going through the RTI process, your MTSS process, and is in need of an intervention. If you are not in either one of those situations, email me, let's talk early on, and we'll problem solve it. We'll figure something out. So I know we can make it work as long as you let me know early on. I really get how everyone's in a different situation and things, so we'll make it work. But just be thinking about that. Okay, let's go into the course now. And let's take a quick look at things for the week. So here we are in SPED 760. I have my student view on. So like I said, you'll want to do your introductions discussion. That's right here. So do that by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Want to print the syllabus? It can be found here. There's also a course calendar that I believe for this course is within the other document section. So if you want a nice layout, kind of a checklist for each week, it's there. As a PDF, it's also here. So then the instructor's Q&A is here. So if you have any questions about the assignments for this week or things in general that you think other people might know, post them there. If there's things that are more specific to you or a situation, email me. It'll always be there throughout the entire course. Okay, so here we go, week 1. So the overview. In essence, I've been talking through most of this here, but it's here in writing in case you want to take a look at it, refer to it. Here's the instructor insights. I have not put this video in here or cleaned this up yet, but it'll look, by the time you look at it for real, it'll be nice and clean and tidy looking. So the readings for the week. So your required textbook readings, just one chapter from Otten and Tuttle. Then we have some additional resources here. I laid them out in detail. I'm sorry about all the words and the reading. I just wanted to provide a context for what you'll be looking at so you know what pieces of it to be looking at and how in depth I want you to be looking at it. So please do take some time and read what I wrote carefully before you dive in to looking at whatever resource is there. We also have some modules down here, sections of modules from the IRIS Center. We'll be using that a lot throughout this course. Wonderful resource out of the University of Vanderbilt. And then we also have the Lives in the Balance website. We'll be using it quite often throughout the course, pieces of it from Dr. Ross Green. Some of you might be familiar with him. He's done a lot of work in Wisconsin school districts anyway. We move on. Here's our discussion for the week. And like I said, it says due January 27th. Remember, your first post is due Wednesday by 11:59 p.m. Everything is due by January 27th, which is Sunday at 11:59 p.m. So you have 4 choices. You pick one of them. It's completely up to you what you respond to. Since you have 4 choices, it's really important that you copy and paste your prompt into your initial posts so everyone knows what you're writing about. Make sure that you support your assertions using APA, use the discussion board guidelines. You can click right here on reply to start your initial thread. And then I think it'll become really clear to you, those that haven't used it before, how you read and respond to everyone in the threads and things. If you have questions about it, though, let me know. It can be kind of tricky at first. Then we have our assignment, which is a presentation this week. It says when it's due, you submit it up here. So read over this carefully. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. Within our courses, we're really looking to provide multiple means for you to practice presenting information, because in our technology filled world, not only in society but in schools, we're going to be asked to do more, not only in writing but with videos and things like that. And it's a great way to also be able to do flipped classrooms and things like that. So we want you to get comfortable recording yourself, recording your screen and things like that. So that's why we're doing the presentation this week. And it's one that I hope you actually will be able to use with paraprofessionals that you hopefully are working with, or other adults in your classroom. So all that information is here. Like I said, after you look through it, let me know if you have any questions, and here's the rubric that will be used to score it. So I'm going to go back to home, and that covers everything here. So everything that you'll need for week 1 is right there. So a big topic for this week is culture and those cultural considerations that we need to make when we're working with students, when we're assessing behavior, when we're writing IEPs, those sorts of things. So teachers must be aware of how culture influences personal interactions and perceptions. This is especially important given that teachers often come from cultural backgrounds different from those of their students. Without that adequate knowledge and understanding of how culture affects student behavior, a teacher might misinterpret a student's actions, which may lead to discipline and or special education referral, which just perpetuates the overrepresentation of marginalized and disadvantaged groups in special education. In general, teachers tend to assume that others had an upbringing similar to their own. I know I was like that when I was in the classroom. When they do so, they create a personal lens through which they view the world and a script of how to act in certain situations. So then anyone who doesn't fit inside that viewpoint or who doesn't follow the script is assumed to be different or perhaps even inappropriate or disrespectful. And then when we're starting to deal with behavior, you can just see how we're perpetuating a cycle here. So therefore, it's important for teachers to understand how culture influences a student's interactions with others, as well as his or her responses to authority figures. So in the readings and viewings this week, we'll learn ways to support students when we, their teachers, have different cultural backgrounds, because much can be done to prevent some of these misunderstandings that lead to tracks that really aren't what's best for students. I wanted to highlight a little bit about Native American students because in Wisconsin and in Minnesota, they're one of a handful of marginalized, disadvantaged groups that many of you will be working with. When I was a special education teacher and a special education director, especially up working with students on the Leech Lake Indian Reservation in northern Minnesota, I experienced some of this firsthand. And I'll be honest with you, I learned so much from the students and teachers that I worked with up in that area. And I'm so thankful for all of that and that they supported me through my learning curve. And so now I hope I can share some of that with you in this course. I pulled an article I wanted to talk through with you a little bit and share some information about from Indian Country Today. Native American students face ongoing crisis in education. I'll share a link in my instructor insights if you want to take a look at the actual article. It's kind of a quick read. It's a nice one. But what it really comes down to is 29 to 36% of all Native American students drop out. And that's even higher in areas where children report a major lack of understanding of Native culture. So students often feel alienated and that their teachers just really don't quite get it. I wanted to share just some sections here from the article. I'm going to read them out loud because I think it's kind of some powerful wording and things here. Even though I think it's sometimes hard to hear, I think it's important that we do acknowledge it and we listen to some of the hard words. So this is even more complicated when disabilities are involved. Some of the most troubling issues for misunderstood Native American students involve childhood and developmental disorders, including learning disabilities, autism, and ADHD, whether formally diagnosed or presumed on the part of educators due to entrenched, albeit beliefs rooted in stereotypes about Native American students being unintelligent. The same institutional racism that sees disabilities in natives underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed drives special education being disproportionately used as a form of discipline against students of color, whether they are actually disabled or not, for behavioral issues. This is something that I experienced, this disproportionality, when I was a special education director, and there were some really great things that the Minnesota Department of Education in partnership with Higher Ed were doing at the time, and I've been trying to find some of the information online and I haven't. If any of you know about it, please share it with me, but I'm going to continue to dig and reach out to some of my colleagues. But that just illustrates a little bit of not only do we have a problem to begin with, but then when disabilities become involved and that sort of thing, it just perpetuates the problem. And what often happens is students end up in the court system. You might have heard Sometimes people refer to the school to prison pipeline. And 30% and Native American students are 30% more likely than their Caucasian youth to be referred to juvenile court than have charges dropped. So what that means is Caucasian youth, the court system, there's data out there to show treat them differently than they do Native American students. So they're more likely to drop the charges. Native American students end up in the system, and that's not what they need. I wanted to read just another little section here too. Many education analysts have noted that when educators don't acknowledge Native American culture with their Native student body, the students begin to feel disenfranchised, said Native Youth Magazine. There have even been a number of schools that have successfully implemented programs that teach educators and staff about Native culture, giving them a better perspective on how to interact with Native students. And that's the key, are programs to train teachers, because knowledge is key. No one deliberately, I believe, do things that are going to disproportionately lead to Native American students being represented in special education more than other groups. It's a cycle that quickly starts to perpetuate when our perceptions and understandings of others isn't there and isn't what it should be. And once that knowledge is there, it's just amazing what some school districts are doing to change the trajectory. So that's my instructor insights for the week, a little bit of a tee up and connection for you. Keep the information about culture and Native Americans in mind as you're working through things this week. And if you have related information or articles and things to share with me, please do. But I think what I just shared here is a nice kind of setup for what you'll be learning about this week. So have a great week. This is my miniature schnauzer here. I always like to throw something out there that'll make you smile. And let me know if you have any questions.